Have you ever wondered why some people reach their 90s with energy and clarity while others barely make it to 80? The answer might be in what you do each morning after waking up. Researchers have identified a surprising pattern, a simple morning habit that distinguishes those who live beyond 85 years in good health. And most shocking of all, it has nothing to do with genes or luck. In this video, we're going to reveal this crucial habit that's directly linked to exceptional longevity. Recent studies conducted in the so-called blue zones, regions with the highest concentration of centenarians in the world, have found this common routine among those who live past 85 with good physical and mental health. Stay until the end, because the last point reveals something most older people never consider, but which could add years of quality to your life. What you'll learn today could completely change your perspective on aging and longevity. Now let's get started. Number 1, the conscious mobility routine. The morning habit that most strongly predicts exceptional longevity is what scientists call morning conscious mobility. This isn't simply exercise, but a specific pattern of body activation during the first hour after waking up. When studying people who have lived beyond 85 years in excellent health, researchers found a revealing pattern. Almost all of them perform a sequence of complete movements shortly after waking. These aren't intense exercises, nor do they require special equipment, but they systematically activate all the main joints in the body. This movement pattern has several key components. First, they begin with gentle stretches while still in bed, moving fingers, ankles, and wrists in complete circles. Second, before standing up, they perform slow, deliberate movements of the spine, gently turning the torso and flexing the back. Third, once standing, they complete the routine with movements that involve large muscle groups, such as walking around the room or performing movements similar to Tai Chi. What's fascinating is that these people rarely consider this exercise. For them, it's simply their way of waking up the body. However, researchers have discovered that this morning routine systematically activates the lymphatic system, improves blood circulation to the brain, and maintains joint flexibility much more than exercise performed later in the day. Consider Elena, a 92-year-old woman who lives independently and still drives her own car. When researchers studied her daily routine, they discovered that for more than 60 years, she has followed the same morning ritual of waking up her body with systematic movements before even leaving the room. "I never considered it exercise," she explains. "It's simply my way of greeting the day and making sure all parts of my body are working." Contrast her with Alberto, who at 75 began experiencing significant mobility problems. Despite regularly attending the gym in the afternoons, Alberto typically spent the first hour of his day sitting, drinking coffee, and reading the newspaper before initiating any significant movement. His doctor never warned him about the critical importance of morning body activation. Morning conscious mobility works because it leverages the body's natural circadian rhythms. During the first hours after waking, the body is more receptive to movement signals, establishing metabolic patterns that persist throughout the day. Studies show that those who perform this type of early activation experience lower levels of chronic inflammation, better blood sugar regulation, and more stable blood pressure over the following 24 hours. Number 2, the power of natural intermittent fasting. The second key component of this morning habit that predicts exceptional longevity is what researchers call natural intermittent fasting. And this is where many people make a crucial mistake. Research on long-lived populations has revealed a surprising pattern. Those who regularly space their first meal at least 12 hours after the last intake of the previous day show significantly better biological markers of aging. This period of natural fasting is neither extreme nor uncomfortable for these long-lived people. They have simply adopted a pattern where they finish dinner early, generally before 7 p.m., and slightly delay breakfast until 7 a.m. or later. Why does this make such a significant difference in longevity. During this extended fasting period, the body activates crucial cellular repair processes, primarily autophagy, which is essentially the body's cellular recycling and cleaning system. This process eliminates damaged cellular components and can counteract the aging process. Take Miguel, 89 years old, who has maintained exceptional mental clarity and energy levels that surprise his doctors. His habit of eating dinner early and having breakfast around at 8 a.m. has consistently created a 13 to 14-hour overnight fasting period. Interestingly, Miguel never followed this pattern for health reasons. It was simply the rhythm that felt most comfortable to him. Contrast him with Patricia, who, despite being very careful about what she ate, used to have dinner late and breakfast immediately after waking, rarely giving her body more than 9 hours without food. At 78, Patricia began experiencing metabolic problems and a deterioration in her health markers that surprised her, given her care with nutrition. What makes this morning fasting period so powerful isn't just its duration, but its coincidence with natural circadian rhythms. The body is programmed to perform repair processes during the night, and slightly extending this period without food allows these processes to be properly completed. Recent studies show that this practice is associated with better insulin profiles, reduced inflammatory markers, and optimized gene expression related to longevity. Dr. Walter Longo, one of the leading researchers in fasting and longevity, has found that this type of extended overnight fasting is present in all the blue zones, where the concentration of centenarians is highest. Number 3, the practice of mindful attention at the start of the day. The third component of this powerful morning habit is perhaps the most surprising. Researchers have discovered that people who regularly live beyond 85 years in good health have a specific way of beginning their day mentally. This isn't necessarily formal meditation, although it may include it. It's what scientists call intentional mindful attention, a period of time, even brief, where the person deliberately directs their attention to the present moment before immersing themselves in the concerns and activities of the day. For some people, this takes the form of a few minutes of conscious breathing. For others, it's a moment of contemplation while having their first cup of water or tea. And for others, it's simply observing the sunrise or listening to morning sounds with full attention. What's fascinating is that neuroimaging studies show that this brief period of mindful attention at the beginning of the day has profound effects on brain activity over the next 24 hours. It establishes activation patterns in the prefrontal cortex that enhance emotional regulation, decision-making, and resilience to stress. Consider Carlos, 91 years old, who has maintained enviable mental sharpness. His invariable routine includes 5 minutes of what he calls being present before starting any other activity. It's not complicated, he says. I simply sit in my favorite chair, observe the morning light, and notice my breathing for a few minutes before starting my day. Contrast him with Maria, who, despite following diet and exercise recommendations, would immediately begin each day by checking news and messages, immersing her brain in a state of reactivity from the first moment. At 72, Maria began experiencing significant memory and concentration problems, despite having no physical markers of cognitive deterioration. Neuroscientists now understand that the way we activate our brain in the morning establishes patterns that persist throughout the day. Starting the day with mindfulness activates brain networks associated with higher order thinking and emotional regulation, while immediately beginning with information and stimuli activates networks associated with reactivity and stress. A 15-year longitudinal study followed 2 groups of older adults with similar health and genetic profiles. The group that regularly practiced some form of morning mindful attention showed significantly lower rates of cognitive decline and greater ability to handle psychological stress, 2 factors strongly associated with exceptional longevity. Number 4, early exposure to natural light. The fourth crucial element of this morning habit that predicts longevity is one that modern science is only beginning to fully understand: early exposure to natural sunlight. Research in long-lived communities has revealed a surprising pattern. People who regularly live beyond 85 years with good health almost invariably get exposure to natural sunlight during the first hour after waking. This morning light exposure doesn't have to be intense or prolonged. Even 5 to 10 minutes of natural light, even on a cloudy day, is enough to trigger a cascade of biological processes crucial for health and longevity. Why is this so important? Morning light exposure synchronizes the body's circadian clock, regulating key hormones like cortisol and melatonin. This synchronization affects virtually every system in the body: digestive, immune, cardiovascular, and neurological. Consider Lucia, 94 years old, who has maintained exceptional health. Her invariable habit for decades has been to have her first cup of tea next to an east-facing window, or, when the weather permits, on her small balcony. This simple ritual provides her with the critical morning light exposure her body needs. Contrast her with Ramon, who, despite following a healthy diet and exercising regularly, spent his mornings exclusively under artificial light before leaving home. At 76, Ramon began experiencing significant problems with sleep, mood, and metabolism, not understanding that the lack of exposure to natural morning light was deregulating his circadian rhythms. Recent studies have shown that exposure to natural morning light is directly related to better quality of night sleep, optimal vitamin D levels, reduction of chronic inflammation, improved glucose metabolism, strengthened immune system, better mood, and cognitive function. Dr. Sachin Panda, a leading researcher in circadian rhythms at the Salk Institute, has found that this morning exposure to natural light is one of the main synchronizers of the biological clock and can have more impact on long-term health than many medical interventions. What's interesting is that the body is particularly sensitive to blue light from the natural spectrum during the early morning hours. This blue light suppresses the production of melatonin, the sleep hormone, and increases healthy morning cortisol, preparing the body for daytime activity. Artificial light simply doesn't provide the full spectrum that the body needs for this optimal synchronization. Number 5, strategic morning hydration. The fifth component of this morning habit that predicts longevity is probably the simplest, but surprisingly powerful: strategic hydration right upon waking. Studies conducted in long-lived populations have revealed a consistent pattern. People who regularly live beyond 85 years begin their day with a specific hydration ritual. This isn't simply about drinking water, but how and when they do it. These long-lived people drink between 350 to 500 milliliters of room temperature or warm water within the first 10 to 15 minutes after waking, usually before consuming anything else. Some add a bit of lemon, but the essential component is pure water at the start of the day. Why does this make such a significant difference? During sleep, the body loses fluids through breathing and sweating, entering a state of mild dehydration. This morning dehydration can be particularly problematic for older adults whose thirst mechanisms are already naturally diminished. Immediate hydration after waking triggers a series of fundamental physiological processes. 1. Reactivates metabolism after overnight fasting. 2. Facilitates elimination of toxins accumulated during the night. 3. Improves cognitive function and alertness. 4. Optimizes blood pressure and blood viscosity. 5. Prepares the digestive system for the day. Consider Josephine, 93 years old, who has maintained exceptional cardiovascular health. Her invariable ritual for more than 5 decades has been to drink a glass of warm water immediately after waking. My grandmother taught me this custom, she explains. I never thought it was anything special. It just makes me feel better to start the day this way. Contrast her with Antonio, who typically began his day with coffee or drank nothing until breakfast. At 73, Antonio began experiencing significant blood pressure and kidney function problems, despite his efforts in other areas of health. A longitudinal study from the University of Tokyo followed 82,000 people for 12 years and found that those who maintained adequate hydration and specifically began their day with water had a 36% lower risk of heart failure and significantly better long-term kidney function. What's interesting is how this simple habit interacts with other components. Proper hydration optimizes the effectiveness of intermittent fasting, improves the quality of morning conscious movement, and enhances the benefits of exposure to natural light. Number 6, optimized early protein intake. The sixth element of this morning habit that predicts longevity is one that contradicts many popular dietary trends: adequate protein intake in the first meal of the day. Research on populations that regularly live beyond 85 years with good health reveals a consistent pattern. Almost all consume a significant amount of high-quality protein in their first meal, usually within 2 to 3 hours after waking. This goes against many popular practices, such as skipping breakfast or consuming primarily carbohydrates in the morning. What researchers have discovered is that the distribution of protein throughout the day is as important as the total amount, especially for people over 60 years old. Why does this make such a significant difference in longevity? With aging, the body experiences anabolic resistance. It needs more protein, and at strategic times to maintain muscle mass and functionality. Loss of muscle mass, sarcopenia, is one of the strongest predictors of premature mortality in older people. Early protein intake: 1. Activates muscle protein synthesis when the body is most receptive. 2. Provides essential amino acids for optimal cellular regeneration. 3. Stabilizes blood glucose levels throughout the day. 4. Reduces appetite for processed foods later. 5. Optimizes immune function, which depends on adequate proteins. Consider Martin, 89 years old, who has maintained exceptional muscle mass and functionality. His invariable breakfast includes eggs, Greek yogurt, or a combination of legumes and grains that provides him with approximately 25 to 30 grams of complete protein. "I've always had a strong breakfast," he explains. "My father taught me that breakfast is the fuel for the day." Contrast him with Isabel, who typically consumed a low-protein breakfast, mainly carbohydrates, and concentrated her protein intake at dinner. At 70, Isabel began experiencing accelerated loss of muscle mass and physical function, despite consuming sufficient total daily protein. A study from the University of Texas found that older people who consumed at least 25 to 30 grams of protein in their first meal showed significantly better rates of muscle protein synthesis compared to those who consumed the same total amount of protein but distributed unevenly throughout the day. Dr. Stuart Phillips, a leading researcher in protein metabolism, has found that this balanced protein distribution throughout the day, beginning with a substantial intake in the morning, is one of the most important factors in preventing sarcopenia and maintaining functionality with aging. Number 7, morning social connection. Here we arrive at the seventh and perhaps most surprising component of the morning habit that predicts exceptional longevity: early social connection. Researchers have observed a remarkable pattern in blue zones and other populations with unusual concentrations of people who live beyond 85 years in good health. They almost invariably include some form of meaningful social connection in their morning routine. This doesn't necessarily mean extensive or complicated interactions. It can be a brief conversation with a family member, a regular phone call to a friend, or even interactions with neighbors during a morning walk. Modern neuroscience has revealed why this element is so powerful. Early social interaction in the day activates neurotransmitter systems, particularly oxytocin and serotonin, that regulate stress, improve mood, and strengthen the immune system. These early morning connections establish a positive emotional tone that persists throughout the day, influencing how the body responds to stress and handles inflammation. 2 crucial factors for longevity. Consider Teresa, 97 years old, who has maintained exceptional mental clarity and physical health. Her invariable routine includes having breakfast with her daughter or calling a friend during the first hour of her day. "I never thought it was anything special," she says. "I simply enjoy starting my day by connecting with someone I care about." Contrast her with Gabriel, who, despite being physically active and following a healthy diet, tended to spend his mornings in isolation and concentrated his social interactions in the afternoons or evenings. At 75, Gabriel began experiencing significant mood problems and a deterioration in his inflammatory health markers, despite his efforts in other areas. A fascinating study from the University of Michigan followed older adults for 8 years and found that those who had significant social interactions in the first part of their day showed significantly lower levels of C-reactive protein, a marker of inflammation, and better cortisol regulation throughout the day, 2 strong predictors of longevity. What's most interesting is that these morning social connections don't need to be extensive or elaborate. Even brief interactions of 5 to 10 minutes are enough to trigger the neurobiological benefits, as long as they are authentic and meaningful to the person. Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, a leading researcher in positive emotions, has shown that these micro moments of genuine connection have cumulative effects on cardiovascular, immune, and neurological health that extend far beyond the moment of interaction. Conclusion: integrating the 7 elements. Now that we've explored the 7 components of this morning habit that predicts exceptional longevity, the critical question is, how can we practically integrate them into our daily lives? What's fascinating is that these 7 elements don't require large amounts of time or effort. In fact, most long-lived people who practice them don't see them as health interventions, but simply as their natural way to start the day. The key is in the sequence and consistency. 1. Strategic hydration immediately upon waking. 2. Exposure to natural light while performing. 3. Conscious mobility that activates all major joints. 4. Intentional mindfulness for a few minutes before immersing in the day. 5. Meaningful social connection, even if brief. 6. Adequate protein intake in the first meal. 7. All this while benefiting from natural intermittent fasting from the night before. When we observe people who regularly live beyond 85 years in excellent health, we see that these elements aren't separate activities, but integrated parts of a natural sequence. It's not about adding 7 new tasks to an already busy morning, but about reorganizing how we start the day to align our habits with the biological rhythms that favor longevity. If right now you feel that incorporating all these elements would be overwhelming, start with 1 or 2. Even small changes in your morning routine can have significant long-term effects. Exceptional longevity isn't accidental or purely genetic. As we've seen in this video, it's strongly influenced by daily habits and particularly by how we start each day. The good news is that it's largely under our control. Are you 60, 70, or even 80 years old? It's never too late to start. Studies have shown that incorporating these elements can have significant benefits at any age, slowing and even reversing some aspects of biological aging. Thank you for joining us for this video. We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment sharing one element you plan to incorporate into your morning routine and how you plan to do it. Your thoughts are important to us, so don't hesitate to share them. Reading your comments gives us great motivation and encouragement. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us continue creating quality content to inform and inspire you. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.